A little while ago, I reviewed The Naked Gun on this channel, and I talked about how it was a seminal comedy in my childhood. And just this weekend, I saw This Is Spinal Tap II, which I would also put near the top of that list. It leaves me with one question. Am I old? The answer is, of course, yes. Secondary line of inquiry. God, that's the oldest thing I've ever said. Should you go see it? Is the new tap the old tap? And why do these all go to 11? Well, enough of my blathering. Let's boogie. To catch you up on the story up until this point, in 1984, Spinal Tap was Britain's loudest band, and they were being followed by a documentary filmmaker, Marty DiBergi, as they toured the US for the release of their album, Smell the Glove. Along the way, they show the hilarious truth of being a touring musician and what it means to be in a band. We fast forward to modern times, where a contractual obligation brings them back together for one final show. But many years have passed since the band have played or even spoken. So what does it look like when you bring the boys back together, with Marty and his documentary crew in tow? Spinal Tap looks to cement their legacy and hopefully leave the show with a living drummer. In real life, Spinal Tap is Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer combining to play David, Nigel, and Derek. Marty DiBergi is the legendary Rob Reiner, and both of these movies are entirely improvised works made by the actors in real time. This was really the first breakthrough in the genre of the mockumentary, with the boys from Spinal Tap making several other films in the same style, with Best in Show, For Your Consideration, and in the world of music, A Mighty Wind. It's a genre that requires such a high level of talent, a very special post-production team, and the foresight to know what you can use in real time and to be able to pull it all together. To the uninitiated, it might seem somehow easier to make it up as you go along, but the reality is that it requires way more ability than a scripted movie, and even with the best of intentions and talent, the end product can vary wildly in execution. All other examples mentioned all had great talent, great premises, lots of laughs, yet the reviews would be mixed. Which makes it hard to rate something like this, because personal enjoyment is the subject is how much you understand what is happening and your ability to separate yourself from that and enjoy it like it is reality. The style is honestly like the movie version of jazz, because you enjoy jazz the most when it makes you feel something and not necessarily the notes that are played. In order for someone to feel something like that, you need an artist whose talent and ability allow it to happen. And somewhere in the balance is a personal feeling of how much it hits. To that point, I really enjoyed the time I spent together with Spinal Tap. It was not as enjoyable as the first one, but I didn't have any belief that it would be. The original Spinal Tap was a Powerball winner for how much love and admiration it had created. It wasn't a big box office hit, only $4.6 million on a supposed $2 million budget, but the cultural influence is unmatched. It is the movie on tour buses across the country, so much that it became a thing for rock bands of the 70s and 80s to claim to be the inspiration for various gags, like the amps going to 11. This version of Spinal Tap was not going to be the same, because what 2025 version of any band is the same as they were 40 years ago? You must have grace for the idea that this is going to be about the same guys, but in a different place. All that said, I found the story to be rather streamlined, but the thing we all come for was the legendary improv actors cutting it up, and it's exactly what we got. Many of the former cast comes back in cameos that are short, enjoyable cutaways. They meld old and new footage in a way that feels natural to the editing of the documentary, and therefore works well in this format. The runtime on both movies are a scant 82 and 83 minutes, which is quick, but it felt like there was so much more happening in the original. This story was a straight line between catching up with Tap and their new work, traveling to New Orleans, the site of the final concert, and rehearsing before the big performance. Along the way, they must recruit a new drummer and make time for famous friends who drop in the studio. As far as the members of Tap and our fearless director, they all have these characters down pat from doing them consistently for the past 45 years. There's never the feeling that Nigel isn't Nigel anymore. They have all grown older, but none of them have managed to grow up. They all say stupid things in calm, inquisitive British accents, and it sounds like they are more serious than they are, but deep down inside, they all remain teenagers trying to sound well-read. Not only were they acting performances up to snuff, I found all the music and the performing of the music to be great as well. In addition, I really enjoyed the addition of Carrie Golliman as Hope Faith, the daughter of the former manager Ian Faith, who had passed. She inherited several of his old contracts, including a Spinal Tap that entitled her to one live show. She deemed it worthless until a viral video of Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood singing Big Bottoms suddenly made it valuable. She has no interest in being a manager for Spinal Tap or following in her father's footsteps in any way, but yet you see some really great touches that Carrie put on the performance that gives a link between Ian and Hope. It really feels like she is her father's daughter, and I felt that this role working was crucial into getting things off the ground. I can't say the same for the character of Simon, and this isn't to disparage Chris Addison, but the difference between success and failure in this role is razor thin. While I think Hope has enough cosmic tie-ins to the story to make her entrance into the story more seamless, I think there was too much to overcome in the character for Simon to work on equal footing with the members of TAP. The scene in the trailer selling tap water and suggesting a couple of them die was the high water mark for him in the movie. Again, he's a fine performer and it does a good job, but it's like if you put a mere mortal was a starting point guard with a dream team. There's almost like no way for it to work. The act of finding a new drummer was a fun side quest, allowing the group to reach out to Questlove, Chad Smith, and Lars Ulrich to see if they would mind sitting in on the most dangerous chair in music. They all pass, but the boys eventually find Dee Dee, who is up for the challenge and brings great feminine energy to a very masculine arena. Dee Dee is played by Valerie Franco, who I had never heard of prior to this, but really seems to come from this as a drummer over being an actor. That being said, if she wanted to try it again, I would encourage, because she was natural. She has one notable scene that adds to the difference between her and the rest of the band, and she does great in that scene and rocks as a drummer for the band. Most notably, we have two famous cameos from Paul McCartney and Elton John. Paul joins the band in studio and sides with Nigel over David in a dispute over an idea for a new song. There are shades of Nigel and David being like Paul and John through the history of Spinal Tap, so it was a pleasant experience having him sit in and add to that creative struggle that he himself shared in former life with the Beatles. Elton John not only joins the guys in the studio to jam, but also at the live show. Both legends of rock were great in this and really added a lot. If there is one thing that has been gnawing at me since I saw this movie, is that I feel like it's missing its moment to speak to what is truly magical about a musical partnership. Derek in the original movie spoke to him being secondary to David and Nigel, and that they lead the group because of their long friendship. We see them bicker creatively and personally, but we never see a spark that lets them tap into the things that made them such great songwriting duo. In my mind, they already worked out broad strokes about David having won an award for hold music and the fight between David and Nigel about a signature change that was too awkward to work. Perhaps one thing in the podcast score inspires Nigel to come up with a way to make the signature change work, and now the guys are off to the races with a brand new song for the final show. The idea hit me the second Paul McCartney walks into the recording studio to jam with the guys. One of my favorite things about Get Back, the documentary about the Beatles from Peter Jackson, is how you will see Paul fiddling with the piano when suddenly plays a couple notes and you recognize it instantly. He's about to write Let It Be. He doesn't have all the lyrics, so he la-la-las over stretches of it, but that spark is noticed by Ringo. And later, they all work together and make it the song we know it to be. To watch the artistry that comes with creating a song and knowing that in some way David and Nigel have that same ability, it makes me wonder why coming up with a new legacy-defining song wasn't a part of the plot. What would have made it all the better is the song was not met by enthusiasm from the crowd. I think every legacy band has had this very situation where they think people can't wait to hear the brand new U2 song instead of the 10 songs that they were known for. We had all this built-in camaraderie and knowledge of characters that could have allowed for 2 super quick scenes that would have tied the whole movie together. You have a little bit where the creative spark leads to a new song and we see all the pieces fall into place and the hope return to the band. Then during the concert, you have a bit where they play the new song and it goes over like a fart in church. Immediately, all the hope comes crashing down. They pivot to Stonehenge and you're off from there. I think 5 more minutes of runtime to get that would have been well worth it and made a more complete story. The fact that all the music was the same songs from the original movie also would have made me want one more new song, like something novel at the end of the film. In honor of this movie, I am taking the leaderboard to 11. It's not This Is Spinal Tap, but it was never going to be the original movie. It's seeing a close friend after a long time. It's the person you care about who never grew up. It's creativity and age and legacy. I found some of the funniest stuff in the credits, the bits and bobs that didn't make sense in the movie but were too funny not to include. But the film has some hearty laughs, and it's only here to make you laugh. And for that, it succeeded. If I had to rate Spinal Tap II, The End Continues, I would give it an 8.1. Of course, that's out of 11, so I convert it to 10, it's a 7.4. It was great to see the band together again. Since this movie isn't traditionally awards fair, I feel it's only necessary to give it a spot on the Fast and Furious leaderboard as well. And because I feel guilty for regressing the score above, I will give Spinal Tap 2 a 7.8 on the Fast and the Furious leaderboard. Not quite all the way back, but we split the difference. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please rate, share, subscribe, and all the lovely things you do if you enjoyed it. And I can't wait to see you on the next time. All right? Have a great day.